thrilled to see you again. If you missed yesterday, you missed quite a show. A lot of steak, a lot of sizzle. We tried to pack it all in, but we really couldn't. You know, this brings so many different worlds together. It's power, it's people, the planet, policy. We talked about places yesterday, quality of place, pollution, pollinators, and even profits, because one of the key differences going forward is that not only are we saving the planet, but we're saving the economy too, particularly in some of our downtrodden communities who've been waiting a long time for scalable end uses for their brownfield sites, just as one example. There are a lot of stranded mine lands, 500,000 abandoned mines in this country still, and those are just on the books. But we're gonna get right to some of our, more of our terrific content this morning, and we're really proud and honored actually for our next block, because we have leaders from both our state and federal government, and these are the folks who are driving the redevelopment renaissance, the solar renaissance forward. I talked yesterday kind of about the end of the beginning, shifting to super abundance from scarcity. Myself as a young attorney at BP when oil shot to $150 a barrel. But under the Obama administration, actually we did drill, baby drill. We doubled domestic oil production, brought on a lot of natural gas, and it's about time for solar prices to continue to come down and a nice storage, a battery war to emerge. And so the whole script is different now. The old playbook we're throwing away, and that's what we're doing over these 3 days, is designing the new playbook. And we're so thrilled to have such a never-ending stream of solar stars, one after the other, and not least of which are our next two speakers. First, I want to introduce the Secretary of Natural Resources for the Commonwealth of Virginia, Mr. Matthew Strickler. Matt is the Secretary of Natural Resources, as I just said, and prior to joining the administration, he served as Senior Policy Administrator to Democratic members of the House of Representatives on the Committee of Natural Resources. He's actually originally from Lexington, Virginia, and he graduated from Washington Lee University and holds a master's degree in public policy and marine science from the College of William and Mary, as well as the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. He was a NOS Marine Fellow, a NOS Marine Policy Fellow at NOAA's Office of International Affairs in 2007. And he even worked with US Senator Mark Warden's successful campaign in 2008. So Matt really knows his stuff. Matt, are you there?
Hey, Dan, here I am.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Morning, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good today. It's a renaissance and I get really excited about this stuff. Especially, I thought we'd be dealing with Mad Max right now, but we're talking about scaling up solar big time in Virginia and going after these really big mine sites who I've seen stranded as a brownfielder for my nearly 20 years in the redevelopment game. So good morning, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Well, good morning, and to you and everybody attending the Solar Summit today. This is a very exciting time, as Dan mentioned, and you know I'm glad to be back with all of you, even though it's unfortunately not in person. Hopefully, we'll be able to do that relatively soon with folks finally getting vaccinated. You know, I remember joining this event a couple of years ago in Richmond, the convention center, when it was the Brightfields conference. And, you know, we talked then about Governor Northam's ambition to tackle climate change and to accelerate clean energy deployment in Virginia. And, you know, we started acting on that commitment from day one of the administration through our efforts to secure passage of the Grid Modernization and Transformation Act, which seems like it was a lifetime ago. And development and deployment of the Virginia Energy Plan, which proposed really a sweeping transformation of our economy through clean electricity. You know, interestingly, I also remember being in the minority on the stage that day and talking about how important it would be for Virginia to join the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative and for the United States to live up to its international commitments for carbon pollution reduction through the Paris Agreement and other actions. All I can say is what a difference a couple of years and a couple of elections can make. We are really, as Dan said, in a renaissance right now, and trying to do everything we can to take full advantage of that and make as much progress as we were able to in our last year in office. So starting on January 1st of this year, Virginia's power plants were covered under new carbon pollution regulations for the first time. We participated in our first Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative carbon allowance auction earlier this month. And our proceeds from that auction, which is one of 4 that will be held this year, totaled about $43 million. And that's money we're going to put back to work in the clean economy to further reduce emissions and reduce bills for lower income Virginians through energy efficiency upgrades, as well as to increase resilience to coastal and inland flooding, which is the most damaging consequence of climate change in our state. So a lot of really good progress there. In addition to joining RGGI, we have, as you know, a powerful new clean energy law, the Virginia Clean Economy Act, which adds Virginia to the very small handful of states that have adopted 100% clean energy requirement into law. In the coming decades, RGGI and the Clean Economy Act are really going to work hand in hand to drive down emissions from power plants and ensure that clean electricity will be delivered to all Virginians. And that's where the great work of folks that are involved in this summit really comes into play. A lot of you have probably seen the report from earlier this week that had Virginia ranked 4th among states in the country for the amount of solar installed in 2020, 1.4 gigawatts of solar in a year. That's obviously, as you all know, equivalent to some of the output of some of the largest gas-fired power stations. And it's just an incredible accomplishment and something that I did not think we would be able to do 3 years ago. But again, we're really moving in the right direction. And Governor Northam's really committed to taking as many additional steps as he can to advance both utility scale and distributed solar across Virginia. I know the newly renamed Virginia Department of Energy is working diligently on implementation of the Clean Economy Act. The Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, which I oversee, spent many hours engaging with stakeholders to craft revisions to our permit by rule program, streamlining solar development in a way that also preserves and protects the natural and working lands of the Commonwealth that I know all of you care about just as much as I do. So the final draft of those regulations is currently under executive review, and I know DEQ is staffing up to respond to implementation of that and to new legislation that'll add storage to the list of resources that are allowed to move forward under the PBR process. So I'm very excited about that as well. Last time I spoke with you, we also discussed some of the growing pains that the solar industry is facing, particularly with respect to land use. And I'm pleased that we're working collaboratively to address potential conflicts using tools like Governor Northam's groundbreaking, Conserve Virginia Land Conservation Initiative that can help identify critical resources and steer development towards areas where the interests of communities, the solar industry, and the environment align. So a win-win-win if we can move in that direction. And certainly the work that you all are doing here at the summit and through collaborative processes like the permit by rule revision, our brownfields program, and aggressive deployment of rooftop solar as well, it makes me confident that we're going to be able to overcome those challenges together. And I guess let me just tell you how excited I am that we finally have new leadership and new partners in Washington that take both of these priorities incredibly seriously. From his acknowledgement of the need to transition to a clean economy, to his support of the 30 by 30 initiative to protect natural landscapes, President Biden has put the focus on energy, climate, and conservation like nobody before him. It's incredibly refreshing and incredibly necessary. The Biden-Harris whole of government approach to tackling the climate crisis is ensuring that each agency of the federal government is looking for every opportunity to reduce emissions, accelerate clean energy, and advance what is also very important, particularly in Southwest Virginia, a just transition for workers and communities that have been left behind by the fossil fuel industry. And central to these efforts is the U.S. Department of Energy. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm recently said that she's obsessed with creating green jobs and that she's all about bringing clean energy jobs to communities, especially those which have been historically dependent upon fossil fuels. So I guess our message to Secretary Granholm is come on down to Virginia and let's get to work. And carrying that message back to the Secretary, we hope, will be Kelly Speakes-Backman, who's my pleasure to introduce to you now. Ms. Speakes-Backman is the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy and Acting Assistant Secretary at DOE. In her role, she is focused on creating and sustaining American leadership in the transition to a global clean energy economy. She oversees the planning and execution of the office's $2.8 billion portfolio of research, development, demonstration, and deployment activities in energy efficiency, renewable energy, and sustainable transportation. Acting Assistant Secretary Speakes-Backman most recently served as the first CEO of the Energy Storage Association, the national trade group for the energy storage industry. She has spent more than 20 years working in energy and environmental issues in the public, NGO, and private sectors. And in 2019, she was honored by the Cleany Awards as Woman of the Year. So Madam Assistant Secretary, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Matt. And good morning out there to the Virginia Solar Summit. It is, I have to just say though, Matt, it is so exciting to see Virginia involved in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. As a Maryland resident myself and former chair of RGGI, I can tell you that reinvesting your share of revenues back into consumer benefits like energy efficiency and solar and other energy measures is going to be a great payback in benefits to your citizens and to the environment manyfold. So it is, you're right, it's a really exciting time for renewable energy. Secretary Granholm, and by the way, her obsession is real with good green jobs. She's recently been sworn in and we couldn't be more thrilled to have her leading our energy agenda. She has a lot of great things in store for EERE in particular. But speaking to President Biden's clean energy plan, he's laid out a framework to address the climate crisis and to put America on an irreversible path to achieve a carbon-free electricity sector by 2035 and a 100% clean energy economy with net zero emissions not later than 2050. Our vision here in EERE, the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Office, is really to drive the research, development, and I will underscore right now, the demonstration and the deployment of innovative technologies, systems, and practices that are going to, number one, transition Americans to this 100% clean energy economy, and number two, ensure that the clean energy economy benefits all Americans. And that's why it's a Biden administration priority to address environmental injustices that disproportionately affect communities of color, low-income communities, and indigenous communities. Across DOE, we're working to ensure that 40% of the overall benefits of relevant federal investments are delivered to these disadvantaged communities. This transition is also going to create millions of good-paying middle-class jobs and ensure clean, affordable, and reliable energy options for Americans. Further, we're determined to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in STEM and the entire clean energy workforce. So as you can hear, we have a lot of work to do, and we really can't do it alone. We're committed to expanding our strategic collaboration and working closely with both our federal and our non-federal partners. So to execute these energy goals, EERE is going to need to coordinate closely with state agencies, with national labs and the other DOE offices, with the federal agencies, state commissions, tribal and local governments, as well as industry and non-governmental partners. So I'm really excited to be here today to share our programmatic priorities and talk about how solar fits in and how we can cooperate to achieve our shared energy goals. The solar energy industry is the fastest growing source of new electricity generation in the nation. Solar's grown from about 2.5 gigawatts of solar capacity in 2010 to about 95 gigawatts now, providing about 3% of the US electricity supply. And I think you saw, or I'm not sure, but there was a report out that came from the National Solar Energy Industry Association just yesterday, talking about how this next decade is going to double its capacity. There's enough solar right now installed in the US to power more than 16 million American homes. Virginia, having about 14,000 active solar installations with more than 1,300 megawatts installed, that means nearly 1.5% of Virginia's electricity comes from solar, which is enough energy to power 147,000 homes. Virginia has a bright solar future. We expect to see more than 3 gigawatts installed in the Commonwealth over the next 5 years. It's also helping with Virginia's economy with 175 solar companies in the Commonwealth and nearly 4,500 people employed in the solar industries. And more solar jobs are on the way in Virginia. Y'all just passed the Clean Economy Act nearly a year ago, which will create up to 29,000 solar jobs and new opportunities for residential and utility scale solar. The state's also set to expand solar access to low-income residents. State regulators are expected to release the final rules soon. I'm looking forward to seeing them for a new community solar program that's scheduled to launch in 2023. In West Virginia, there are 349 active solar installations with more than 10 megawatts installed. The price of solar in West Virginia has dropped 45% over the last 5 years. Since the state has first invested $6 million in solar over the past few years, opportunities for growth are certainly rising. But as fast as solar is growing, we need to grow even faster in order to achieve President Biden's climate goals. By setting a target of 100% carbon-free electricity grid by 2035, this administration is going to spur the deployment of hundreds of gigawatts of solar. By 2035, solar will represent about 30 to 50% of the US energy supply. And to meet that goal, we need to deploy about 100 gigawatts. That's 2 to 5 times the current rate of deployment. This requires faster siting. It's going to require permitting and interconnection being done faster, and it's going to require well-trained workforce to support job growth. Faster solar deployments require further investment in the grid operations to ensure the reliability and resilience of the nation's electricity supply. So we're conducting research and analysis, not just for this region, but across the country, to really be able to establish viable pathways to achieve this carbon-free emissions reduction. We've identified 5 programmatic priorities in our first few weeks here at DOE across our office's 3 sectors: energy efficiency, renewable power, and sustainable transportation. This is going to guide our research, our development, our funding and programs, and our policies as we transition into this clean energy economy. So the 5 programmatic priorities really are grid modernization and integration, decarbonizing transportation, decarbonizing energy-intense industries, reducing the carbon footprint of buildings, and enabling a net zero agricultural sector. You'll notice that none of these priorities are specific to just one single EERE technology office or any one specific technology itself. That's because we have to be willing to work across all of our offices to scale up our research, development, demonstration, and deployment to meet the urgency of this climate crisis. Solar has a super important role to play in accomplishing all 5 of these programmatic priorities. In addition, to accomplish these goals, we need to accelerate solar deployment, obviously, and the associated job growth by opening new markets, by providing workforce training, by growing US manufacturing, by reducing environmental impacts, and by focusing on environmental justice. We've got to enable inverter-based technologies to provide essential grid services and black start capabilities while demonstrating the reliable, resilient, and secure operation of a 100% clean energy grid. We've got to reduce hardware and soft costs of solar electricity for all Americans to be able to afford carbon-free power sector by 2035. We've got to support a decarbonized industrial sector with advanced concentrating solar thermal technologies and develop affordable renewable fuels produced by solar energy. EERE is funding research not only to improve how solar systems are operating, but also where they're operating. Most of the large ground-mounted solar PV systems are installed on land used only for solar energy production. It's possible, though, to co-locate these solar and agriculture on the same land, which could provide benefits to both the solar and the agricultural industries. Co-location of solar PV and agriculture could benefit farms with diversified revenue sources and ecological benefits, while reducing land use competition and siting restrictions for solar developers. DOE recently selected a couple of projects that focus on solar and ag co-location. These projects are tackling challenges like improved mounting and racking designs, co-location models that can help realize new value streams, and analysis on the ecological or performance impacts of solar and ag co-location, such as food production, water supply, and soil resources. In addition to this co-location, we're looking at stormwater runoff at solar sites, how to better understand and predict and manage water resources, as well as identifying best practices for stormwater management. We also understand the value of utilizing contaminated lands for solar development. We funded a project at NREL, I'll not acronym it, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory back in 2015 to evaluate approaches and to reduce the costs of financial risks in developing projects on these lands. The project enabled collaboration with the Environmental Protection Agency to develop best practices for siting solar photovoltaics on municipal solid waste landfills to provide assistance in addressing common technical challenges for siting solar PV on former landfills. The best practices guides provides guidance on a wide array of issues, from how to deal with waste composition and settlement to managing stormwater issues to siting on steep slopes. Now, about some projects in the greater Virginia area. We currently fund 6 active projects in Virginia. These projects span the entire solar spectrum, from helping utilities to bring more solar to the grid through better detection of abnormalities like cyber attacks, to improving the function of concentrated solar thermal power plants and enabling low-income Americans to take advantage of clean, affordable energy. As I mentioned earlier, one of our goals is to deliver 40% of our own overall benefits of federal climate investments to marginalized communities. A research project funded by our Solar Energy Technologies Office, or lovingly called CETO, along with the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, or NRECA, will help to achieve that goal. NRECA's project team is working with electric co-ops to expand solar access and affordability in low to moderate income communities. It's an important partnership because co-ops serve 92% of the US's persistent poverty counties, where there have been very high poverty rates over a long period of time. One of the co-ops participating in NRECA's project is the BARC Electric Co-op, which serves the Bath and Augusta counties in Western Virginia. Approximately 19% of households in BARC's service area have incomes below 200% of the federal poverty level. As part of the NRECA project, BARC is in the early stages of developing a 2.5 megawatt solar project, a portion of which will expand solar access for low and middle income customers. And it'll enable them to receive a minimum savings of 10% on their monthly energy bills and reduce that energy burden. The lessons learned by BARC as they navigate through this process is going to be compiled by NRECA along with those from the other participating co-ops, so that more co-ops across the country will be able to enact similar programs that are going to benefit thousands of low and middle income Americans. So, as I've described a little bit this morning, we have a lot of work to do to meet this Biden administration goals of achieving this carbon-free electricity sector and a clean energy economy not later than 2050. And we can't do it alone. We need the help of our federal and our non-federal partners to be able to meet these ambitious goals. We need to continue to work with the greater Virginia region to bring more solar onto the grid as quickly as possible. It's an all hands on deck sprint for us, and we look forward to continuing to work with you all and to expand our current collaborations. We think that together we can accelerate the progress that's critical to securing our clean energy future and bringing about a carbon-free grid that's resilient, reliable, and affordable by 2050. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I look forward to any questions that you might have or the discussion at hand. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. That was terrific. We're so grateful you could plug in today, and Matthew as well. We appreciate your summary. And I also want to thank you both. I should have mentioned at the top that you really bent over backwards to accommodate speaking at the summit. The U.S. Senate doing the people's business threw us a wrinkle, and we had to scramble. And so I appreciate you both and your teams behind the scenes and making sure that you could find time for us. Thank you, because it is.
Dan, you took my thank you. I was going to thank you for your flexibility in this. I was really looking forward to kicking off tomorrow, and unfortunately, I had to be called away. But thank you so much for your flexibility in this.
Absolutely. No, we're so grateful for your leadership, and as well as from the Commonwealth. As Matthew said, Matthew, thank you again for being there in 2019. You and I were early on this. We kind of saw the stars aligning, and I think a lot of that discussion in 2019 magically appeared in legislation. Isn't that funny how that works? You get the people together and they start having these productive conversations on the details, and things start to make sense. And I'm really seeing this amazing, even bipartisan now. There's HB 1925. It's on Governor Northam's desk, sailed through the Virginia House unopposed. And we've seen very similar things with brownfields. Redevelopment has been one of these little nooks and niches where everybody seems to agree that there is a powerful public role to play. But now with as Kelly was talking about, the solar renaissance really coming on, we're picking up the pace, and it's a boom, as I said. But Matthew, what is your current view of Virginia? You guys are as busy, rebooting as the Biden administration. I know you're looking to collaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. We're, as you said, we're rocking and rolling, getting a lot of solar on the ground. I guess a couple of things that are, kind of front and center for me. I play a part in our energy policy in the administration, but also obviously have, visibility and authority over all of our natural resources. And so the conversations, around solar siting have been really something that I've been focused on. We have, as you mentioned, we're getting more and more bipartisan support for renewable clean energy, and that's great. But as you all know, there's really kind of an urban-rural divide in our country that we are really trying hard to bridge. And I know that President Biden and Secretary Granholm are interested in bridging as well. And I think targeting 40% of the energy and clean energy investments towards lower middle income communities with a focus on rural is incredibly important. But we've heard during the General Assembly session and in other fora some concern from members who represent rural areas about clean energy changing the rural character of some of these communities. And I don't think that's necessarily a true statement. I think a solar farm is a farm, and I think it's a high value farm. And I think getting that into people's psyche is part of what we need to do. At the same time, there are some legitimate concerns that go beyond kind of the NIMBYism that you would expect. We don't want to cover up our high value agricultural soils with solar panels. We'd like to, co-location, great. If there are ways that we can work that out, that's fantastic. We don't want to cut down, productive forests that are providing fiber and wildlife habitat. So, I think the focus on brownfields is incredibly important. The focus on rooftops incredibly important. And one of the things we really want to partner with the federal government on is identifying the lands. Obviously, those are kind of the low-hanging fruit, but also at a more granular level, areas that are maybe more marginal for agricultural production, maybe not as important for wildlife habitat, don't have negative impacts on clean water, and steer development away from those. And I think we have a tool, as I mentioned, in the Governor's Conserve Virginia initiative that identifies land conservation values based on a kind of a pretty broad suite of different criteria that can help in renewable energy siting, and just look forward to to partnering with Kelly and her team and also the folks who are working on the 30 by 30 land conservation initiative to make sure that we're all in alignment there.
Matt, I am so in agreement with you on the fact that not all agricultural land is suited for co-location. I totally agree with you on that. And that's why I say time and time again that we can't do this alone. We can't just say that everything should be co-located. We've got to do a community-based planning. And that's why we're really working hard to reach out to the local communities, to states, to regions, and to, frankly, industry associations as well, to try to find out where the best places are so that we can help and not sort of force things on communities, but really help to accelerate for those areas that are looking for it. I think as we gain more and more progress on solar installations, folks will begin to see the value if they were a little bit shy of it at first. And so that's what we're looking to do, is really to encourage and to help and support with a community-based approach.
Yeah, Kelly, that makes a ton of sense, and look forward to partnering with you on that. I guess one question for you, if I can, we're kind of pivoting now, and certainly we have a lot to do on the energy generation side, but are really trying to look at the last year of Governor Northam's term at transportation decarbonization. And while switching to EVs is really important, and incentivizing EVs is really important, and we just passed the Clean Cars Act to make Virginia a LEV-ZEV state in alignment with the California Clean Air Act Section 177 requirements. It's not just about the EVs; it's making sure we're charging our EVs with clean energy, and we've got some traction on that. With our electric utilities and others trying to to make that happen. But what are your thoughts, and kind of what's the plan from the administration's perspective on ensuring that the energy that's going to charge these clean cars is actually clean energy?
Love that question. And I didn't speak much to the transportation side of this, but in my opening remarks, but transportation is a huge part of the Clean Energy by 2050 plan. And that's exactly, but with respect to your immediate question about making sure that clean energy is what is charging these, that's part of the role that our goal of 2035 clean grid is going to be. So if we can work our way towards there, then as the grid is decarbonizing, these electric vehicle stations will be charging more and more zero carbon or less and less carbon intent electricity. And as part of that infrastructure, we also have a goal of 500,000 new public charging stations across the nation by 2035 as well. So we're working on that at the same time, and this is also why part of part of the reasoning behind our goals is not just specific to these one technology or another, but it's got to work together, right? You've got to get all the solar, all the wind, offshore wind. I know y'all are maybe interested in a little bit of that. Offshore wind coupled with energy storage, really like 100 gigawatts of storage over the next decade is going to help propel us to that cleaner energy future so that we can have a reliable and resilient grid as well. So it's kind of all in. It's a little bit like a Rubik's Cube that we're putting together here.
Yeah, we saw the success of that, the Obama administration that came in, it was across the board. They let fracking run, it's true, but they also gave Elon $200 million, the DOE did, that he paid back early with interest. And so yep. We doubled oil production and natural gas in the recession. It was actually the biggest carbon boom of all time, bigger than Saudi Arabia in the 50s and 60s. But I think it'll be the shortest lived carbon boom because the race for renewables is now on, and storage as well. And it's you're right, it's not one technology. It's everything, and patents are coming every day, and costs are coming down, and that makes it now finally, I think of it as the end of the beginning, because we've got the new kind of green in these green projects, the profit, and that will unlock our capital system, which is so well tuned. But Matthew, if I can throw it to you quickly, thinking about just this spectacular, it's almost as a young energy guy, I wouldn't have believed we'd be here in 2021, and now we've got all these amazing projects, but making it real for people. You mentioned demonstrations in your remarks. Can you maybe just TikTok for us? What are some of the fantastical projects that are just so real now and standing up in Virginia?
Sure, Dan. So it's been really interesting to watch this development. Through our permit by rule program for I guess it's smaller scale renewable energy, but up to 150 megawatts. We have seen just an explosion of applications come in, over the last few years, and that's a really unique and innovative thing in the Commonwealth that I think has been a huge part of facilitating, getting solar farms and kind of smaller commercial scale activity off the ground. It's been something that's been really helpful in making allowing data centers in particular in Virginia to be able to offset their carbon emissions. Folks are coming in, Microsoft, Amazon, you name it, that want to put a server farm in, and they're pairing that with a solar farm to be able to power basically that operation, and it's easy to do that because we have this permit by rule law on the books, and as I mentioned earlier, we're working to update that and make it even more user-friendly, while at the same time being able to to provide incentives to protect pollinators and wildlife habitat. So that's one thing that's really cool. Our DEQ is also working with the Energy Department on our brownfields program and trying to identify places, particularly in Southwest Virginia. And there's some demonstration projects out there as well on reclaimed mine lands and other former industrial sites that are really kind of accelerating the transition from kind of older energy sources to newer clean energy. And as you mentioned, that's something that that's really strong bipartisan work that a lot of our leaders out in Southwest Virginia who are Republicans are very, very supportive of. So that's just a couple of examples, but it's there's a lot of stuff underway, and again, a really exciting time to be working on this stuff.
It absolutely is exciting. It really is pinch me type stuff. I can't tell you. When as a young attorney, the smartest people that I knew in the world thought that we were running out of oil. Peak oil was real, and now to see everything coming online, and it's really just the work is just beginning. Matthew knows in 2019 we're a proud audience of nerds here, and this is a nuts and bolts conference. Our two feature issues are mineland reclamation and pollinators. We're really bridging the gap from the worst to first, and it's to say it out loud sounds crazy, but we're really going to save the bees and the butterflies with Brightfield redevelopment and put people to work in rural and urban areas. We've got big sites out in stranded places, but we've got these nice little brownfield sites in urban markets too, and solar works on them all, it turns out, and they're not doing anything else. Kelly, as you're stepping into this new role, are you just totally overwhelmed, pollution and bees and butterflies, just in our little sphere here, it's right. So amazing, but you're looking at the broader realm, energy proper. Am I too hopeful? I'm not an optimist by nature, but it's getting real. It's becoming just an undeniable professional view that abundance is before us.
Yeah, it is a really, really exciting time to be in the clean energy economy, in the clean energy sector. And I can tell you, just even from my last position at the Energy Storage Association, I spent all of my time thinking about how all of these pieces go together, and going back even for when I was a regulator in the state of Maryland, you think about, you have to keep reliability and resilience, you have to keep affordability, and all of these pieces are starting to come together. Costs are coming down for solar, certainly. Costs have come down for wind, they're still coming down, even offshore wind. There's a little work to do. That's what I get to do now, is think about the research and development that needs to be done in order to enable this offshore wind. And then with storage costs coming down like 85% in the last decade, that's just amazing. And it's still coming down in terms of installed costs. So all of these costs coming down are helping consumers make choices of cleaner energy without having to make the choice of whether, frankly, they can pay for their medicine and their food or pay for their bills. And that's really, if you're in government, that's what your goal is, to make sure that citizens have a better life. And that's not just, it includes making sure the short-term bills are taken care of and that people can live, but it's also in the longer term that people can breathe, and that our earth is here, and that they can go out to the parks and see some butterflies, for gosh sakes.
Yeah, quality of place, and also, they don't freeze in their trailers in Texas. It breaks my heart to see, 2021, the grid go down, and we kind of default to, the lowest level of civilization. It just should never happen, ever again. We can take that off the table. And yesterday, it has already come up, because we're digging down at the project level at this summit. We have to do this right. Yeah, it's a boom. Great. We've had a lot of land booms in this country over the last 400 or 500 years, and not all of them worked out so well for everybody, but it can actually be different this time. We're popping up these solar panels, and it's kind of even just a long-term interim use. It's not like we can clean up every mine that's out there over the next 20 or 30 years of these solar panel, the lease cycle, but we can put them to work, and we can do some natural species along the side and kick it into future generations, at least in a positive and productive way. But so Matthew, more tactically now, let's zoom in if we can. Virginia is just policy-wise, it's popping in front of the laboratory of states, especially if Governor Northam signs HB 1925, there'll be nothing like it anywhere else in the country, parallel to the EPA Brownfield program, a real, grant program for Brightfield redevelopment. It's unfunded, we'll need some help. There's a little wrinkle in there about we need to get money from the federal government before the Commonwealth can fund it. But these kind of catalytic dollars, like in brownfields, it's actually pretty small. They're not big programs dollar-wise. They're just highly effective. They're early stage and they make later things possible. So Matthew, you know, what are you working on right now?
Sure. So Dan, to your point about you know, about that legislation and kind of the uncapitalized fund, you know, I think we're going to have our eyes focused very closely on what Congress does with an infrastructure package. I think clean energy is going to be hopefully a big part of that, and we will certainly be letting our congressional delegation know that we have this fund, that we have this really, you know, as you mentioned, groundbreaking program set up. You know, just ready for some investment as far as, you know, kind of shovel-ready type projects that create jobs. We got a lot of those, and so it's something where we can put people to work, you know, very, very quickly as our economy recovers in the clean energy space. So, you know, that's certainly one thing we're working on. Another thing, and we've talked a lot about, you know, the challenges of getting solar to underserved communities in rural areas. In urban areas, we've got an even bigger challenge because we lack land in a lot of cases. And as you mentioned, there are brownfield sites, and it's true in a lot of communities. But community solar is something else that we really need to focus in on, and you know, kind of encouraging that and helping you know, underserved urban communities actually see the benefits of solar energy and take advantage of that resource. And that's a little bit of a tougher nut to crack, but I know there are a lot of people smarter than I am who are working on it. And you know, we're focused very much on energy efficiency in some of those communities right now through using our RGGI money, as I mentioned. But you know, the solar deployment goes kind of hand in glove with that. So that's there's just a couple of examples of things that I see we'll be focusing on in the coming months.
Yeah, and Kelly, you mentioned, you know, I think one of the things we haven't mentioned so far, except for you, was, you know, the power of the municipality and the localities. You know, locals rule. I was energy and real estate was my thing as an attorney. I'm retired now. But you know, they've always had a voice. It goes back to common law, you know, and they can definitely have a voice now. And Matt mentioned NIMBYs, but throughout this conference, we're putting a lot of these nuts and bolts out there for people, and we've got a lot of great agency folks plugged in, because it turns out there are playbooks and guidance and websites. Yesterday we featured Laura Strine from Repowering America's Land Initiative, which actually started as a joint thing between EPA and DOE, and they've got tremendous amounts of resources that are free and accessible to people. EPA has the technical assistance program. You can actually call and talk to those guys for free if you have a question about your brownfield grant. So tactically, can you zoom in for us? You know, how are you at the federal level, and beyond all this great stuff that we're featuring at this conference, how are you thinking about empowering those communities that you mentioned in your new role?
Well, absolutely. Actually getting out there and speaking to people, gosh, I can't wait to get out actually personally and speak to people physically. That's one of the things that that we're doing. But our Solar Energy Technologies office has a lot of webinars, has a lot of resources. You can go to those straight to our website. But also we have, even beyond the solar office, but inclusive of solar, we have the weatherization and the intergovernmental programs office, which has state energy program dollars. So among all of this, you know, one of the things that we do, you mentioned earlier that we're a $2.8 billion office within EERE, is we put funding opportunities out there. We put a lot of money out there, not just in this administration. It will not just be on early research and development. It will be on deployment, and it will be on demonstrations of not just the technologies, but demonstrations of how to impact communities as a whole. So I would say keep a lookout for that, because we have a lot of funding opportunities coming out really soon. And then throughout fiscal year 2022, as we're working through that process, I think you can expect to see more.
Thank you. That's actually a perfect tease for a lot of the stars we have coming afterwards. We even have some hands-on training sessions. You know, we're going to be going step by step through some of these materials, some of these programs. They're out there. They're some of the best kept secrets. I keep talking about brownfields as a brownfielder, but it's 20-to-1 leverage over there. For every dollar that Uncle Sam has put through the EPA brownfield program, they've leveraged $20 of private capital. Yeah. It's stunning return, and that's why it always said, even I think the last brownfield reauthorization was supported on a huge bipartisan basis. So I'm sensitive to the top of the hour, and I know you guys are too. You've got the people's business. But I do want to give you final thoughts,
one more
please.
thing. So this is I get all excited about this. I also need to do a big, huge shout out to one of the solar giants who has joined Department of Energy, Jigar Shah, who is now running the loan program office. They are open for business as well. So if you have, you know, inventive ideas, innovative ideas of what to put together, and you need some money for that, Jigar is dying to work with his team to make sure that that can happen. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, and we're actually going to be including that information in the knowledge binder takeaway that goes out next week after the conference with everyone's presentations and all the materials. Thank you for working. Your people in your office are great. Yeah. And thank you for all the information. We will feed it to the market. Matthew, throw it to you quickly. Final thought. We're over time, but thank you. Go ahead.
No, that's it. I won't hold it up. Again, just thank you so much for having me, Kelly. It's been great to meet you and have a little bit of dialogue, and look forward to more of that in the future. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, keep up the great work. And I like to say the future's as bright as we build it.
That's awesome.
Thanks. Keep up the great work.
You too. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dean.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.